Have you ever felt completely bored with everything? Like nothing interests you and every day feels exactly the same? That's exactly how our story begins, with a young boy named Milo. Milo was so bored, he didn't see the point in anything. School was a waste of time, games were dull, and even his own toys couldn't capture his imagination. He spent his afternoons staring out the window, sighing and wishing something, anything, would happen. And then one day, it did. When Milo got home from school, he found a mysterious, giant package sitting in the middle of his room. It was a purple toll booth, complete with instructions and a map. The instructions were from Milo, who has plenty of time. The map showed a strange world, with lands like Dictionopolis and Digitopolis, and seas like the Sea of Knowledge. Curious and with nothing better to do, Milo assembled the toll booth, hopped into his little electric car, and drove through. Instantly, he was no longer in his room. He was on a road leading to a place called the Lands Beyond. His first stop was a land called Expectations. He drove along a beautiful road, imagining all the amazing things he would see, but the more he thought, the slower his car went. Soon, he found himself completely stuck in a gloomy place called the Doldrums. It was a grey, foggy area where nothing ever happened and thinking was forbidden. The inhabitants, called the Lethagarians, spent all their time napping and doing nothing. Milo was in danger of becoming one of them, trapped in boredom forever. But just as he was about to give up, a dog with a giant clock for a body appeared. This was Tok, the watchdog. His job was to make sure no one wasted time. He explained to Milo that thinking was the only way to get out of the doldrums. By using his brain, Milo got his car moving again, and with Tok by his side, they sped off towards the city of Dictionopolis. Dictionopolis was the kingdom of words, ruled by King Azaz the Unabridged. It was a city where letters grew on trees, and you could literally eat your words at the marketplace. Milo and Tok attended a royal banquet where they ate delicious sentences and light snacks. At the banquet, they learned about the kingdom's big problem. King Azaz and his brother, the mathematician, who ruled the kingdom of numbers called Digitopolis, had a terrible falling out. Years ago, they had two adopted younger sisters, the princesses Rhyme and Reason. Everyone came to them to solve arguments and settle disputes, because they always had the perfect answer. But one day, the two kings asked the princesses which was more important, words or numbers. The princesses wisely answered that both were equally important. The kings were so angry with this answer that they banished Rhyme and Reason to the castle in the air. Since then, the entire land has had no rhyme or reason. Everything was in chaos. Inspired by the story, Milo volunteered to rescue the princesses. King Azaz, impressed by his courage, agreed to the quest. He gave Milo a box containing all the words he would ever need to know. And so, Milo, along with Tok the watchdog, began their dangerous journey. Their first new companion was a large, well-dressed insect called the humbug. The humbug was a bit of a flatterer and not very brave, but he decided to join them on their quest anyway, mostly because he didn't want to look bad. The trio set off, following the map towards Digitopolis. Their journey was filled with incredible and bizarre encounters. They met a man who was short and tall, fat and thin, all at the same time, because he grew down from the sky instead of up from the ground. They saw a symphony that created colors instead of sounds, conducted by Chroma the Great. When the conductor took a rest, Milo decided to try conducting himself. He created a chaotic, mismatched sunset and barely managed to fix it before Chroma returned. They also had to cross the Sea of Knowledge, where they met the weatherman, who rushed round worrying about whether the weather would change. They visited the City of Illusions and the City of Reality, learning that things are not always what they seem. One of their most frightening encounters was with the terrible Trivium, a polite, faceless demon who trapped them by giving them pointless, time-wasting tasks. Like moving a giant pile of sand with a pair of tweezers, Tok, the watchdog, managed to save them by reminding them how much time they were wasting. Finally, they reached Digitopolis, the land of numbers. It was a stark contrast to Dictionopolis. Here, numbers were mined from the ground like precious jewels. They met the mathematician, a stern ruler who carried a giant pencil as a staff. At first, he was just as stubborn as his brother, insisting that numbers were far superior to words. Milo, using the logic he had learned on his journey, managed to convince the mathematician that the princesses needed to be rescued. He showed the ruler a letter from King Azaz giving him permission for the quest. The mathematician, not wanting to be outdone by his brother, gave Milo his own magic staff, a pencil that could solve any math problem, and allowed them to continue their journey. With permission from both kings, the final and most dangerous part of their quest began. They had to climb the mountains of ignorance to reach the castle in the air. These mountains were home to all sorts of terrifying demons, each representing a different kind of ignorance. There was the demon of insincerity, who sounded trustworthy but was full of lies, and the gelatinous giant, who tried to blend in and make everyone conform. Milo, Tok, and the humbug had to use all their courage and wit to escape these monsters. Using the gifts they had collected, Milo's box of words, the mathematician's pencil, and their own cleverness, they fought their way up the mountain. As they climbed the long, winding staircase to the castle in the air, the demons of ignorance swarmed behind them. They reached the castle just in time, found the lovely princesses Rhyme and Reason, and explained their mission. The princesses were overjoyed, but there was no time to celebrate. The castle began to float away as the stairs crumbled. The princesses reminded them of a saying, "Time flies." Realizing what they meant, Tok, the watchdog, who could literally make time fly, carried them all safely down from the castle, just as the demons were about to catch them. When they landed, the entire kingdom was there to celebrate their return. The demons of ignorance vanished in the light of knowledge and reason. King Azaz and the mathematician were reunited and finally agreed with their sisters that words and numbers are both equally important. Balance was restored to the lands beyond. Milo said his goodbyes to all the wonderful friends he had made. He promised he would come back, but the princesses told him that now that he knew the way, he could find his own path to all sorts of wonderful lands. He hopped back in his little car and drove through the Tollbooth. Suddenly, he was back in his own room. It felt like he had been gone for weeks, but when he looked at the clock, only an hour had passed. The Tollbooth was gone. The next day, Milo woke up, and the world looked different. His room was full of interesting things to discover. School seemed exciting, and he was full of ideas for games to play. He had learned that the world is only boring if you don't use your imagination and curiosity. Milo waited for the Tollbooth to return, but it never did. A note appeared in its place, explaining that it was for other children who needed it. But Milo didn't mind. He now knew that adventure and wonder weren't in some far-off land. They were right here, all round him, just waiting to be discovered. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this journey into the world of the Phantom Tollbooth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories that spark the imagination. See you next time.